So, I am supposed to start a podcast, but whoever knows when that's gonna ever happen. So, looks like I'm gonna be recording a video. I don't know what I'm gonna do with the video, where I'm gonna upload it. I'll try to upload it to YouTube, but I just feel like there's some ideas I should get out that I might forget. So, what I was thinking about was like people's positioning and people's position in your life, and just being okay with where I am and where people's positions are. Obviously, we realize everybody's not permanent. Like, we hear the term, like, I think it's seasonal, temporary, in a lifetime, something like that. But you hear shit like that all the time. Excuse my language, but I'm gonna be real. You hear shit like that all the time. But the reality is, or at least for me, I'll speak for myself. My reality was that I wanted everyone to be permanent, because I was like, well, why can't people be like a permanent fixture in your life? Just because, like, obviously if you enjoy them in your life, you would kind of want them to, I guess, always be, again, speaking from my experience, or not even for myself, I would always want them in my life. It's only now that I realize that. So this is kind of fast forward what I was like. I basically talked myself to this like conclusion, if you will. But it is great to have people in your life that see you not only for who you are, but where you are, and don't require anything else. Not for where you're going, not for where you were, but for who you are in that moment. And I talked myself through like a situation of an experience I had when I was in LA with a person who should have only been temporary. The situation should have never lasted past maybe a night, but it became permanent. And it was such a difficult, it was difficult for both parties because there was trauma involved. But what I found difficult was, so parts of the relationship, as I said, most times you can look back on a relationship and see it as it should have been permanent, or it should have been temporary. But in this relationship specifically, it happened in such a short time frame that was sort of lost in translation. So essentially, what should have been temporary became permanent. And so what I was just talking myself through was like, basically, some relationships are a little bit of both. So obviously we are not in control of our relationship, so we don't determine like which relationships are, 50-50, more or less, or more than less, or less than more of the other. But I don't know, in that relationship, it ended up being where I couldn't. So what I was, again, I had like a lot of ideas before I came on, but what I was saying was like, so I've had relationships. So I'm a firm believer that, I don't know how I want to word it first, but yeah, I basically don't shit on, I don't know, because some people might disagree, but I believe that I'm the type of person that doesn't shit on something that once benefited me. Meaning, if I once benefit, which benefit is sort of a general term, because we can all benefit from something, and everybody feels like certain things are more beneficial than others. But I don't believe in like, and again, some people will disagree, but I don't think that I shit on people or sort of throw people under the bus that I once like had some type of connection with. So back to relationships, I was like discussing with myself the like difference between the two, if that makes sense. Like certain relationships I've had, me and the person are not obviously together, but we're still cool, and I wouldn't change anything about the relationship. I wouldn't say the relationship, but we're not beefing. So I was present in those moments, and I wouldn't change anything about those moments. Versus other situations where I feel some type of way, not a specific way, but there are things that I would have done differently, so I feel some type of way because there's a lot of shit that I let slide or didn't address, and that brought me to sort of the point or the conversation piece or point, whatever, of relationships can be a little bit of both. And like I said, for that example in LA, it happened to be a little bit of both because it was two people who we weren't even supposed to be in that situation, and it ended up extending itself. Excuse me, but that's a little bit different because it was never supposed to be that. But I mean, I was thinking about a lot of my so-called friendships and even family relationships that were never supposed to be. Not that it wasn't ever supposed to be, but it wasn't intentional. And I was thinking about the two friends that I can think of that make up the difference. And the difference for me, like I said, is for seeing me for who I currently am. Not for who I was, who I'm going to be, who I can become, what I can give, because these people have shown up throughout all of my life. And not all of my life, but all of my life within like the last 10 years. As long as I've known them. Mind you, there have been other people who have come and gone, who I have met through whatever, different facets of life. But it's just crazy how you can have people in your life who don't see you for who you are. Or what you can give, or what, I don't know, like what you've given. In some cases, they don't see. They only see the current negative state or lack of, support, emotion, but they don't see all of the contributions or even action on their part that led you to where you are today. I don't know, might sound like I'm rambling, but of course it made more sense before I press play. That's how it always is. But yeah, it was pretty much that. I feel like I explained it the wrong way, but it's just crazy to me how. But I'm okay, like that's what I was saying. I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with the way things are. Because, like, for example, with the situation in LA, like I said, that situation, even though what made it a bit of both is that there were times where there was things I wanted to say that I felt some type of way about. That maybe in another relationship I would never get to say. But the way that happened, like I said, because it was such a short span of time, so much happened in that little bit of time, and time went by within that short span where we were able to address the things that we weren't necessarily fans of. So it was a lot of moments of enjoying the moment, but then it was a lot of moments where, you know what I'm saying, shit was addressed that neither one of us necessarily wanted to address, or knew how to address in a way, or just felt that addressing it would solve it. Because like I was saying to myself earlier, like, there was shit that was addressed that wasn't necessarily solved because the other party didn't believe that either, again, I can't speak for them, that it needed to be solved, or that I was telling the truth, or that it was worth solving. Again, I don't know the reasons why, but the shit wasn't necessarily, it didn't change. So that's an example of addressing something in a relationship and it not changing. Keep in mind, this happens in friendships and relationships that, you know, extend well past the time that occurred, but it just goes to show, like, what I was comparing and contrasting really was, like, some relationships can be a bit of both. That was one rare example, but I feel like most of my friendships were never supposed to be past a certain point. Like, they were basically all temporary, because I was trying to make them permanent, and I don't know that any of them were intended to be permanent. I could be wrong, but like I said, I have not really been a part of any of those friendships, or I'm no longer a part of any of those friendships. Like I said, I can count about 2 on my hand of the people that I still, and it's not about comparing the amount of time or necessarily what happened. Obviously, though, what happened contributes to why you may or may not talk to a person. But like I said, what makes it different about the people that I still talk to is that they've always seen me throughout any phase of my life, not for what I was going through, not for what I could give, not for what I had or didn't have, not for where I was, not for what I could articulate, but for who I was. So even if I was going through something that I couldn't necessarily articulate, they still saw me for who I was. And that is rare. That's a rarity to find in a person. So shout out to those 2 people, Patrice and LaShawn. And we don't talk every day. That's what I was like, we don't talk every day. So, like, I don't know if that's a perception or not. I think that it's a perception out there somewhere that people think they feel like they have to, which not necessarily, because certain people get it. If you get it, you get it. But that you have to talk every day, and the reality is you don't. Like, we send each other memes. Like, I talked to my friend Patrice today. We talk about everything from, you know, family life to career to everything from new food products to TV shows to, I mean, literally everything. And it's like with the same amount of depth and like detail as like something that we're personally going through. Like, it's crazy. And we've seen each other throughout so many, like, both traumatic and, like, super funny situations. And my friend LaShawn, it's the same. Like, we literally can talk about, like, she was texting me about an experience she had at a restaurant, and, like, things that were happening with her family. At the same time, we were talking about, like, the same medicine that we are taking, and she hasn't quite got over her cold, and I'm, I guess, getting over mine. But that's what I like. It's because there's no form of fashion. It's real life. It's a real working friendship and relationship. So sometimes we don't get back to each other for days at a time, or maybe hours at a time. Sometimes we text right back and forth and reply. It's a working, and I think so many of my other relationships were just based on so many other different things. Whether it was the person was bored, or we were friends with someone else, or there was a feeling of obligation, or for every other reason. And that's obviously why they didn't last. Nor me knowing the person through, you know, you can imagine the reasons, I don't know, that people, I guess, become friends. But it's kind of like, I was just saying, I'm thankful that I haven't had a cushiony upbringing to where I'm super close to my family, because I wouldn't have went out into the world and met the people and made the difference that I have. Because I've had conversations at bus stops, I've had conversations in coffee shops, I've had conversations in a swimming pool, or in an Uber, or on a plane, or at a restaurant. And it's been so, like, heartfelt and so just affirming and purposeful that honestly it's been more fulfilling in a way than, you know, the sort of relationship that I thought I was fostering and creating, like, a permanent place for. So what I would say to the person who is trying to, I'm not going to say hang on to a relationship, because I don't believe that hanging on is the right term, just because I believe every relationship you have is for a reason. But I do believe that we try to overstay our place or time in someone's life. And so if you're that person, I would say allow the universe to work, because in reality, it's nothing you have to do. Another thing I was saying to myself was, it's not a conversation that has to take place. For a lot of relationships that I had, there were conversations that took place, but while that conversation took place, I knew it would be the last conversation. I think there's also a perception that, you have to receive closure is the word. Like, it's like, I don't know if it's like a psychology term or like a therapist term, but I feel like it's overused, and I feel like people think they need to acquire some type of, like, official closure to close a chapter. The disrespect was a closure. And I know y'all have seen that quote before, because I'm not going to act like it's my quote or I said it, even though I've said that probably before I read it. But yeah, the disrespect was the closure. So for me and my friend Patrice, matter of fact, have shared that quote and talk about it all the time. Because the reality is, you knew what you did. And it's not even you knew what you did, but it's like, the way that I put it is that certain boundaries were crossed. Or the reality is, you weren't even supposed to be permanent. So I had a friend, airing out all my dirty laundry, who basically said that our friendship had ran its course and that it no longer served. And that was the last conversation. The person was blocked, and I've never spoken to them since. And since then, they try to reach out to me and request like certain things, and I'm just like, make it make sense. Like, why would you think that you have access? But that just goes to show how people see you. And it's just interesting that you would have the balls to ask for that, but you don't consider me as a friend. So that just goes to show, you know, how weird people are. But yeah, like, there's no conversation needed. And it's so many relationships that have gone that way within the last year. And I'm just like, bruh, there's nothing else that needs to be stated at this point. That was the last conversation. So again, I go back to, would there be anything that I would change? In some of those relationships, I do feel a way, because again, there are things that I would have said that I might have not said. But again, the universe had situations happen. Whatever led me to that road, it showed me there's nothing else to be said, because you have confirmed over a historical past. That means over time, history has repeated, and you have repeatedly shown X, Y, and Z being your MO. So at this point, I'm not finna go back and forth with you. It's no conversation to have, because in a lot of cases, family is considered that permanent fixture that we think, or that, I don't know, because again, I can only speak for myself. I even thought, or was taught, I don't know where it came from, that family is permanent. But the reality is, I didn't grow up with a lot of extended family. We visited them, but the reality is, it was my immediate family. But even that, we have grown apart, and I don't think that anyone is permanent, because the reality is, nothing's permanent. Everything passes away. Whether you lose connection with the person, whether a person passes away, or I don't know. There's so many reasons why, you know, you fall out of touch with the person. But my thing is, in the case of relationships where it's a clear ending, because I've had that happen so much in the past year or two, where I used to think like I needed closure, and I'm like the situation, because in so many cases I was put in so many weird situations, and just in general in my life, I have been in crazy situations with surrounding relationships, family relationships, friendships, all kind of shit at this point. But I'm just like, you're never gonna disrespect me again. Like, I'm good on you. Like, it's nothing else to say. Like, you think I'm gonna go back and forth with you? No. If we never speak again, it's okay. And it's not, it doesn't come from a place of like cockiness or like bitterness, but it's like, what more would there be to say? Like, what more would, like, what else is there to say? I don't understand. So yeah, at this point, I just feel like I don't know, like, I don't know if y'all feel me, but I can't be the only person who feel that. Like, that is nothing else to say. And it's crazy because I met a friend through a friend in LA. She was a Capricorn, and she had described the situation. I don't necessarily want to go into like what happened to her, but basically a friend flaked on her, and she was like, it ain't shit else to say. So I don't know if it's a Capricorn thing, if y'all are in the zodiac, But she was like, it ain't shit else to say. And I just be feeling like certain situations, like, what else did you want me to say? Because I feel like it's not going to change the situation. That's another thing. Like, people feel like because you have a conversation, that was another thing that I was thinking about, that I think another perception, all these perceptions, is that a conversation is going to change. That's the perception I used to have, is that a conversation had the ability to change the outcome of the situation. The reality is, some conversations are not that powerful. Some conversations are not even needed. And the reality is, one conversation does not have the ability, always. The key is always, because some conversations do shift relationships and perspectives and ideas and thoughts and feelings and emotions. However, in some instances, it would not be a single conversation that's going to change the outcome of a person's relationship. So to those people who are in situations that feel that way, it's not a conversation left to have to change the way that person sees you. Because again, if a person does not see you for who you are, not for where you're going and not for where you've been, it's not in the conversation. At that point, it's the person and their perception of you. And that's what I had to realize. No matter how many conversations, no matter what takes place during the conversations, obviously it matters what you say to someone in and outside of a conversation. But we'll just say, for the sake of argument, that regardless of what's said in the conversation, for some situations and relationships, it's not going to change the outcome. Because again, the universe has brought you to this point, meaning you can go back and forth with them, or you can just identify the fact that this behavior, more than likely, it's a conversation you had before, because it's very rare that you stop talking to somebody based off one conversation. However, that happens too. I've had that happen where, like I said, not just in that situation, but really not at all in that situation, but in another friendship where we didn't have a conversation at all. But then another friendship, we actually had a friendship. Of course, the way it came about was kind of weird. It was a work relationship, but then the last conversation we had, there was really no communication after that, and it was clear that the friendship was over. And even though the person tried to pursue it, I didn't feel the same about it. And then eventually they stopped pursuing it, and then they didn't feel the same way about it. And then I tried to pursue it at some point, and it was just over. So it's kind of like, when we do that, but when we do that, we only hurt ourselves in a way. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Your hair looks a mess. But, yeah, I just find that when we do that, or I can only speak for me. Not only speak for me. I can speak for lots of experiences and lots of other people. I'm speaking for myself right now. Excuse me, when I say I don't think that it, well, again, it hasn't done much for me. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm trying to think where I'm even going to post this, but, yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't want to make it like over 30 minutes and ramble, but, I just thought I would share because I try to make voice notes and I feel like they don't make sense and I never go back and look at them or read them. But I'm like, I guess I have to be on camera even though I hate making videos, but I guess it'll live longer and possibly I'll post it. But I just hope that it resonates with someone. Something I said resonates with someone, but it's literally like thoughts that I had out of nowhere that, again, I usually keep in my head, but I was actually speaking it out loud and I kind of wanted to state it out loud. I mean, feedback would be nice, but you know, I just wanted to put it out there. And then hopefully, again, like I said, it reaches someone. Because when, you know, I talk to my family and friends, they do respond and they're like very receptive, obviously, when we talk about things like that. But a lot of people are like, you should start a podcast. That's something I've been working on. I bought a podcast kit. It's still in California. Try to buy a laptop. The laptop doesn't work. So at this point, I'm just like, the podcast is difficult at this point to try to figure out. I'm pretty sure it's simple to somebody, but to me, I'm just like, bro, I don't feel like trying to figure all this out and then trying to post it and edit it, and it's like, it's too much. Kudos to the people who do it, but I don't have the energy or the time. By the time I set all that up, I even forgot what I'm even talking about. But I'm glad that I kind of remembered like the train of thought, because that's a thing. Like with me, when I press play, I forget everything. Same thing if I try to write things, like I don't even know. But yeah, I'm glad I remembered most of what I had to say. Maybe this will be a thing, like a vlog or a video diary. But yeah, so the podcast that I wanted to do was actually analyzing, which is crazy. I didn't even think about it. It's analyzing relationships, whether it be intimate relationships, family relationships, friendships, all types of ships. And just the dynamic between the two, or it could be more, it could be a family, whatever, you know, sort of people or individuals that make up the relationship. And then that obviously involving what I consider the greatest component, which maybe you'll find out later, in a relationship, because obviously we have some that we throw around, and that are, I guess, a cliche. I don't know. Again, we talk about perception. Their perception of what should be the most important in a relationship, and then you actually have the reality of what people put first or don't even consider. So yeah, I have something in mind that I think is pretty much the greatest component in a relationship. But yeah, I wanted to analyze that and then talk to different people and look at the role it plays in their life, or if they have even considered it, and then just hear about their experiences, both in life and love and friendships and relationships, how they grew up. Like, depending on your story, obviously it will be different. So there were a few people I have in mind, but honestly, I don't even wanna talk to them anymore. So it's weird, but of course it's similar. It's similar and different for all of us. Like, there is something similar about all relationships, whether people realize that or not. And then the difference is you, because it's how you view yourself in the relationship. Like, do you view, you know, some people view themselves as the victim, we'll say, for an example, when in reality they're the problem. Or they're a narcissist, or they're gaslighting. So obviously that's a whole nother episode, so to speak. But yeah, that was just a teaser. I didn't even realize that sort of fed into that, but I mean, that's pretty much my life. And I think that, I don't know that it's my life's work, but I know that people say it's very helpful on the way that I explain it, and that's pretty much how it comes to me And obviously meeting people, like, it changes. But, you know, there's a lot of experience that I can draw from. Because as much as I've been so many people's friends, I don't know that I ever were their friend. I don't know if that's a saying. Like, have you ever found out that you were people's friend, but they were never your friend? And that's such a thing for me, because I feel like in my head they were my friend, but I don't think I was ever their friend. And that's what I'm realizing. Not even just friends, even family. Like, I never was, like, it's like, we were never anything. Like, not that, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but yeah, it's like, yeah. It's like the relationship never existed because it was based off the wrong reasons, you know, or like, yeah. So, I don't know if that makes sense or if I'm just rambling. But, yeah, that is what I want to talk about. So, eventually I'll talk to individuals about their families and what they think is the greatest attribute, is what I'll call it, in relationships. But I do want to share eventually, because I was actually writing a book as well. The book is on my laptop. It was on my first car, which I no longer have. And then I printed it and left it in the second car that was towed in California. Long story. And that car was also towed. So, yeah. I don't know if I'll ever get it back. It was in the Mustang that I was sold in California, in the trunk of a car that was towed from a gas station for apparently us not, you know, supposedly parked there, even though there was no sign. But that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so I was typing the book up, like I had a name for it, like, but it still goes along with what I've pretty much been explaining. Relationships, the dynamic between the two or more, and what I feel is the greatest component, how it affects it, and what it contributes to the relationship. And then just hearing about like people's relationships, analyzing how they would be if they considered that component, and if they put it as number one, and if they didn't, I guess that kind of would be like the compare and contrast. And then like basically how they've been living their life up till this point, what they've been, you know, sort of putting as their number one in relationships. So yeah, this is just basically me brainstorming of how I would ask a question if I was like interviewing or talking to a person who but yeah, it's not even like an interview, but just like, you know, some people you just find in conversation like what they view as most important, or, you know, close to most important, and then some people you just some people I don't even think about it or consider it, and that's part of the problem. But yeah, so hopefully, I don't know if I'll make another video, or if the next video will be with somebody, or the next thing I release will be a podcast. I don't know, but yeah, stay tuned, and I hope some of this makes sense. It's been about 40 minutes. Hopefully somebody watches to this point. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all.